We can begin if it's okay for you. I guess there will be some other people joining in a few minutes, but just to appreciate the punctuality of the ones who have already joined, we are going to begin. So I wanted to say thank you, everyone, for joining us today, this Monday afternoon, with this kind of complex topic we are going to be discussing today. We hope it will be a little bit less complex at the end of the session, and we will have some interesting tips on how to turn regulations into your competitive advantage at the end of the day. So thank you all. Thank you, of course, Heikki as well, for leading us in this in this topic we are talking
Nice to
about.
join you.
I'm not going to say much more, just to let everyone know that we are recording the session. It will be available afterwards. And if if you want to ask something or you have any suggestions or doubts, you can raise your hand on the session, or you can also write the question in the chat. We will be reviewing all of them at the end of the presentation. If it's something important, of course, we can discuss it in a moment. That we will see how it goes. And so again, thank you all. And just I'm leaving the room to Heikki Pitkänen, who is a great expert in legal stuff and regulation in Europe. And just when you want.
Thank you, Carolina, so much. And it's great to be here. And just technicality first, is my slide showing?
Yes, yes.
Yes,
perfect.
Yeah, that's always a good place to start.
Yes.
And it's really nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I need to tell about my history a little bit. Que estudié en Valencia por un año en 2001, es hace tiempo. And my Spanish is not much mejor since those times. So let me continue in English. I'm really glad to have you here. I promise you we will have ample of time for questions and answers at the end. I would suppose we will take about 30 to 40 minutes to go through what I want to present and talk about your competitive advantage, taking regulations into account and how to navigate, especially the digital regulations of the European Union today. And we will touch the AI Act, maybe a little bit on the Data Act, more on the EHDS and for certain MDR and IVDR. Not go into any details, but to give you an idea of what that would mean in your regulatory strategy. My background, if I move on forward, is in biomaterials. Firstly, I used to work in biodegradable orthopedic implant companies, 3 different startups. I promised myself I will never touch regulations, but I found myself from the deep end and realized that we are meant together. And since then, I also have worked in 2 different notified bodies and certification body test laboratories, CBTLs, in Finland for electromedical devices, for software, for usability. And that experience from the other side of the table, from certification, gave me a lot of insight and visibility into realizing how really difficult the regulations are for innovators and wanting to resolve that. And me and a few co-founders, we established teniéndolas as a startup, as a RegTech startup, and wanted to solve the challenge by digital means. I will show our solution in a bit. We've been here since a few years already, and a bigger company called Aurelia has acquired us in 2021. So we are equipped with a team of around 80 regulatory, quality, and clinical research professionals today. And those would be in Finland, in Sweden, in Germany, and in Poland. But naturally, if you need any help, you would be free to approach to us or naturally local consultants. I've been involved in standardization in ISO technical committees. I've been representing Finland in the advisory board for healthcare standards for Senelec, the European counterpart for ISO and IEC. And I really believe in gathering all that knowledge and insights and ideas to then be more helpful for the innovators to understand what regulations and compliance is really about, how to turn that into your competitive advantage. Writing a book and so forth, collaborating with multiple organizations. This is the challenge that I'm sure all of you recognize. It's so complex. It's a maze. It's called many names, and it's a global phenomenon. So if you think you are in some way unique in finding regulations very complicated, you're not alone. Everyone else is facing the same challenge, and we're really trying to help the bottom line, trying to craft this complexity into tools that I will now show you to understand, to take you on a new baseline of knowledge to recognize how the regulations apply to you, and then move on to work with consultants, with the notified bodies, with authorities, with hubs like Bioed or others who can then help you out from a new level of understanding. So this is the entries mechanism. You land in a tool now this time for the MDR and IVDR. It takes you through the qualification and classification of medical devices. If you need the terminology, you can pick it here. This is where you find all the familiar things related to MDR as classification. You would find the same regarding the IVDR from here. And when you turn on references in this tool, you will find where this information is from. So the first bit of this particular term is from the MDCG guidance document X, from its clauses Y or Z, and it goes to the sublevel of those clauses or articles. From the MDR article 1.1 and the same regarding the IVDR here, to really give you the idea that you can always go back, use this link to go to the regulation and confirm your finding. What we have done here, we have merely broken down the regulations into its atoms and built it back to you into a pathway that you can follow to navigate these basic principles. Turning off references, it will look very simple. And whenever you need more information, you can just let's say, blow up your screen with everything we have put here for you to navigate, to learn examples, guidelines, and it's all from those official sources. So we try to stay away from interpretation, but since we know so much, it's easy for us to construct this pathway for you. Let's say that you are a software product, because we're in a digital topic today. Let me turn off the references. Let me skip accessory question, go to the MDCG guidance document, figure 1, step 3, and step 4, very difficult questions. And you might need to know what does communication mean, what is simple search, what is lossless compression, to know if our product is really doing what medical devices are meant to do. And here we have every bit of guidance, every bit of examples from those official sources, including the borderline cases, like the medical calculators you might be aware of. So you click this link and you go to the borderline manual to read about it. You need to tick both to be a medical device, and then you land on the definition of a medical device. And let's say that you are intended for investigation of physical process or diagnostics or monitoring. And even in that case, if it would be purely for sports goods, we even contain some clauses from the EU case law where it might steer you to the correct direction, whether you're on the borderline of, let's say, well-being or sports and medical devices. Let's keep on with these choices and skip IVDRs. I will just show you quickly that you land on conclusions like this one, and these will be printed in your final report. According to what you have answered so far, it seems to be a medical device regulated by the MDR, and on you would go then to classify your product. Now that's just to show you quickly how this tool functions. If I would go back to the top, I would note that there is also an entries user manual. Wherever you need to, you can, for example, access list of terminology from here, and all terms from the MDR and IVDR are listed for you here. Going back to my presentation, this is really what we want to do. Very traditionally, companies learn slow because it's so complicated, and we want to push you on a steep learning curve and to reach a new baseline of regulatory know-how and literacy to move forward, to make educated decisions from day one, de-risk your path as an entrepreneur, and save months of your time along the way. If you think of how we position regarding other services, we don't even want to claim that we replace anything. We just claim that we make the beginning much more clearer. You can play the entries game and seek your options, and you still will need training. You still will need experts in your team, or as a consultant, you might be able to use generative AI, but you need to know the principles so you can use it confidently. You might have EQMS systems or whatever, self-learning, like the books we've also written. And all this coming together, adding the entries element will save you those months of time. Just a few words from others who have used the tools. Maybe I go to the last one to save some time, makes learning so easy you cannot get away. So we work with universities, we work with hubs. They are the clients who spread our tools to the innovators within their ranks. And this gives the hub or the university the opportunity to even push the innovators a little to start learning, because we make it so simple.
But Heikki, why should the health innovators invest in regulatory knowledge in the early days? Or if it's so complicated and it's just so overwhelming, I guess.
That is the key question, Karolina. Thank you for asking. When it comes to why you would want to look into regulations, and why do I say you want to look into them so early, is because it's about safety. It's about the efficiency of the product in the market. And when it comes to regulations, they say that it's non-negotiable. You need to apply the highest standards, especially in safety, putting the product on the market. But no worry, because that aligns perfectly with what you also do in the market. That is the baseline for your business. Imagine if your product would fail and it would cause damages or unsafety for the patients or your clients. That might be very difficult then for your business as well. So this goes hand in hand. And the regulatory requirements have been built along the years, throughout decades, to give you an idea how to build up a safe digital medical device or other types of devices. What the regulations say, and this is direct quotation from the MDR and IVDR, Annex 1, General Safety and Performance Requirements, is that the devices need to achieve the performance that you have intended for the device, and they shall be safe and effective. Then it comes to balancing the risks and the benefits and make sure that the benefits win. And in all cases, it's not maybe even clear when it comes to, let's say, cancer or heart diseases, where that risk-benefit ratio lies. And it's then up to you to collect that data and make sure that the certification body, notified bodies, understand your case and make your way to the market, taking into account the generally acknowledged state of the art. And this means that you will need to apply standards in your work. That would be the most straightforward way to comply to the regulations. If you try to use any other path, it means that you are inventing the wheel of compliance yourself, and that will not be a very easy path to go. This is really the reality globally. Companies very typically start too late taking requirements into account. But if you look at the medical device life cycle and you apply some concepts that are there, you may start with feasibility. This is not yet regulated. And then there is a certain phase in your product development where you apply design controls or design and development principles from the standards. And then when your product is on the market, you are still regulated according to the post-market requirements of EU regulations and naturally others if you have entered other markets. So this, if you are already far in designing your product, it would be too late to acknowledge that regulations apply. That is the reason we tell you that you need to know the principles, at least understand them at day one, and then start applying them gradually.
So, third month is too late if you want to make it easier. We know that there's a lot for health tech innovators to consider in regulatory compliance. What are then the first regulatory principles you recommend for them to start from?
According to our experience, we have divided the early principles into 8 different activities or actions. And this is the first 4. And I come back to, before going to those 4, you again need to appreciate that the regulations and standards, they are decades worth of wisdom in a condensed format. If you think of any business literature or business books, startup literacy, it's just as important to read and learn from the experiences of the others who have been there and done it. And that's what regulations contain, that level of wisdom. And standards, they are put together by the industry players who have been there for those decades, and they know how to produce safe products. Of course, they go across a little bit across the lines, and they are too heavy. They are not very readable. The legal design of a legislation is very poor. And that's also why we then come into the picture and offer you the means for easier understanding of what these regulations say. But going into those first 4 early principles, the most important one is the intended purpose. That would be the heart of a medical device from the regulatory perspective. Anything you put in your intended purpose is then generates the flow of requirements that you need to apply to. I will come back to that intended purpose just a little bit. The other 3 would be the device class, because that then provides the level of proof that you will need to put together for your conformity assessment. And this is the same everywhere globally. In principle, there are certain classes, and the higher the class, the more you have to do. List of standards, list of regulations as well. That would be the baseline for your state-of-the-art safety requirements. So you need to be able to collect all the standards that you will then lean on, all the regulations that you will need to comply to. Make sure that you have everything figured out. And the fourth one here is the regulatory strategy, your roadmap for market entry. I will speak about that in a bit, but let me take you back into those pathways just a little bit to explain how we deal with this. So this tool is called the regulatory journey. It's been developed together with the Danish Life Science Cluster, and it creates you actually a draft of regulatory strategy when you go through 8 chapters of this tool. And again, the regulatory strategy is something that is a requirement from the MDR and the IBDR. Here you can learn what is required, and let me take you to the path. And let's agree that we have a software product because we're talking about digital here. And this is where we land. The first question in chapter 1 is about your intended purpose. And if you don't know, you can again lean to the terminology. You have guidelines here, you have examples here, and this is actually, there's no references here at all because the MDCG guidance documents from the Commission do not contain examples or too much of guidance regarding your intended purpose. So we have collected it. We have sat down with our team of consultants and the Danes, and we came up with this amount of guidelines to give you an idea what an intended purpose might look like. And we have also some bad examples of an intended purpose to give you the idea. And what you answer here, we hope really that we reach you at a stage where you only have an initial version of your intended purpose draft. That's where these learnings give you the most benefit and those savings in time. But we also teach you here that later on, when you move forward with your clinical evaluation, with your risk management, you will do findings that will then add up to your intended purpose. You might come to modify it and fix it later during your feasibility phase. But let's say you have an initial version in your mind. Let's say that you went through that other tool or through other means, you figured that it's an MDR product and you found that it's a class 2A software because software today, sorry to tell, but in principle, there's no class 1. You might be aware of that. Now we land on the crossroads of other regulations. We are still in chapter 1. I'm taking you through the whole thing, but just to give you an idea that if you have AI in your software, or if you process personal data, or let's say that you want to claim interoperability with EHR systems, and that's where we land on different regulations like the EHDS regulation or the GDPR, or we are talking about the AI Act. Sorry, looks a bit messy, but when you have time to invest in it, then it's much more simple. And all the advice from the guidance documents related to the AI Act, which might be relevant for you, and again, links to those other tools. So let's say that I assume I have AI in my medical device. So I then open up the AI Act tool. And this is where I go on a similar pathway through the AI Act. So it's regulation by regulation through different toolings. If you're not sure, you can also take a pathway into the definition of an AI system. But let me make the choice here now that it's an AI system. Let me skip some scoping questions to keep my demonstration simple. Then you might be the provider, or in MDR terms, you would be the manufacturer. But you also want to learn what are the requirements for your deployer, which would be, in this case, the hospital, and make sure that both of you and your client understand what to apply from the AI Act. Since you are a class 2A medical device, you are also a high-risk AI system, and that's where you will need to be able to communicate well with your client, what each party will need to take into account. Again, references on, you will see where these questions pop up from, and I can make the choice that I'm the provider. placing on the EU market. We are in EU, and we get conclusions printed in your final report, landing on prohibited AI systems. It goes very deep, it goes complicated, it goes into the whole rabbit hole of the AI Act. With time, sitting down, you will get an idea of it. So let me go back to that previous tool. I figured that my system is an AI system. I figured that we process personal data. Let's say that we also are interoperable with EHR systems. I could show you the EHDS regulation tool, but let's again keep it a little bit simpler. Now, an example from the final report. This is the end report from the regulatory journey tool, and it summarizes your answers from chapter 1 to chapter 8. Show this to your consultants, and they will have a very good idea where you are at this moment. And then the remaining bit of this report would be your draft regulatory strategy, again with action points that you can then fill out yourself here, because we didn't ask you for all the details of your product. And this is in principle the contents that would go into your regulatory strategy, and you can edit this as you like, as your local consultant also likes. You can put whatever information here and make it correct. Objective, and I want to take you a little bit further into this document just to give you an idea. The roles and the team is important to make sure that everyone understands. EU market approach. This is just a fast forward into applicable regulations and standards to give you at least an initial list of which standards you should be looking into if you are such and such type of a product. And task time and cost estimates, which are also provided you in a Gantt chart format. And if I zoom in a little bit, you would see that there are certain items that you will need to focus on, give you some realistic idea of the timeline that it might take to run you through all these activities, including potentially clinical investigations. That's what we want to give you. And going back to my presentation, I have now, in principle, covered the intended purpose. We've gone through device classification, at least an initial list of standards and regulations, and your draft regulatory strategy. And that is where we have landed. And I could explain you more, for example, the regulatory strategy, because that is truly a key document for you to move forward, that you add to your business planning and business strategies. It aligns with your marketing strategy, with your clinical data strategy. We mentioned those things here as well. And there's a lot to consider. And the idea is that we would want to help you in aligning regulations with everything you consider in your business.
It's impressive the big difference it makes when you are guided step by step and question after question. Not
there's a lot to consider, truly.
It's a lot, but when you see the tool and you can follow step by step, it looks different than when you are just facing the documents and on your own. It's amazing. So let's say we already have these regulatory strategies. We've done the homework and we have the document. So what would be the next most important steps into compliance?
Very good. This is truly the beginning, and I think our services and our digital tooling is really helping you out in that part. But then when it lands to hands-on crafting of a quality management system or using EQMSs or different services, that's where our team from Aurevia kicks in, or your local consultants, or whomever you want to use to get hands-on. And this is where I come back to the Annex 1 of of the MDR and IVDR, and want to remind you that they are really the heart of the MDR and the IVDR, while the intended purpose was the heart of your medical device from the regulatory perspective. And from through these requirements, there are 4 items, again, we want you to focus on. The first one, the most important, clinical evaluation, your evidence on your product. This includes clinical investigations regarding the intended purpose that you set for the device. But you don't need to take the whole thing all at once. There are certain things that it's very logical to start from, and literature review especially is something where you can train yourself, and if you are a researcher, it's very natural to you to go to literature, review, do the benchmarking, review competitors, review the state of the art clinical practice of your type of product or different types of product that have similar intended purposes or are used for those similar purposes. And that's the beginning. That's where you practice your clinical evaluation muscle. And when you know the principles, it will be then easier to flow into the subsequent activities. And when it comes to clinical investigations, we really recommend to use professionals for that activity. Then go all the way to your post-market surveillance. Your clinical evaluation never ends. None of this never ends, but you start off from somewhere, from the literature, mirror it back to what your product is, make decisions on how to bring the proof, the clinical proof of your product, and move onwards. And then to balance the clinical evaluation and, in principle, the benefits that you try to prove is risk management. And the risk benefit ratio is key in MDR and IVDR. This is where, again, you can start from little. All of us talk about risks, even in the early stages. Even if you're not even a risk management specialist, you talk risks daily, I'm rather sure. So start writing those notes down on a piece of paper, put it somewhere, and then if you are not the one who is going to manage those risks, take somebody knowledgeable and to have them help you out. The standards and the regulations will give you some ideas also where the risks lie, and those are good places to start from. And then towards the full-blown benefit risk analysis that is also a living thing throughout the life cycle of your medical device, which we recommend in point 3 to start from feasibility studies. And again, practice that muscle, because then the design control will need to be well documented, and it's very robust in many ways. So the feasibility phase will give you more flexibility and time to prepare. But make sure that everyone in the team understands what is coming up. What does design control mean? And it will be much easier to dive into that phase later. Then the 4th thing is that whenever you work in collaboration with any parties regarding your product, it is key to do supplier evaluation. It's a requirement, but it's also very meaningful to make sure that all parties that you work with are knowledgeable about the same regulations. And one of the biggest blunders that companies could do is that neither the company or the subcontractor, for example, to develop the software, knows which standards or requirements are key. It is very heavy to then come back if you have designed the software already to redesign and do the proper documentation and apply the proper controls. And this is where it perfectly aligns with your business, marketing, and sales needs, which I will explain you in just a little bit. Karolina, does that help you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's a lot, but
It's a
yeah,
lot,
sure,
again.
sure. Yeah. Now, but the steps are clearer now. Thank you. Could you share some examples where things can go wrong and how successful startups have avoided the regulatory risks?
I hate to go to those negative stories, but they are valuable. And I believe in philosophy of learning from others' mistakes. It's a it's it really pays back. So my first note on this list would be that regulations are not taken into account early on, and that is, I think, the most common thing to happen in Europe and globally, and this is where we also go out to post in LinkedIn about the regulatory literacy. And while the European Commission now talks about simplification and deregulation, it then leaves out the clarity, because regulations will remain in place. How do we address the clarity and the understanding? And that would need to be one of the elements that the European Commission also pushes. Then it goes into more detailed blunders, like you might classify your product falsely. For example, the difference between a class 1 device and class 2A device is quite dramatic because the other one doesn't need a notified body. So if you then recognize later that we're actually in a higher class, you might need to do quite a lot of work. Wrong standards might be chosen. There's an example where physical device, an electromedical device, chose 61010 series. That is a lab standard, lab safety standard, while they should have chosen the 60601, which is the electromedical standard. And there's a world of difference. One is this thick and one is that thick, really many times more requirements. And there's a lot to cover afterwards if you missed that one. Too few resources. That's also always when you fight against your budget and the capabilities of startups, early stage innovator teams. If you don't know regulatory priorly, you need to bring in people, whether they're consultants or someone that are rare to find these days to take that seat in your team. And that's always a great challenge. That's where I would advise companies to take somebody to grow into that position, to take regulatory responsibility, and also a consultant to help you out. And little by little, that knowledge is transferred from the experienced people to those who are starting off. And it is a fact that as a medical device manufacturer, you need to take that responsibility into your own hands and manage it. It cannot be outsourced indefinitely. Companies might change their intended purposes for the product without checking if that actually then affects the compliance, like classification or other. Founders bias is always there. A regtech startup has it. Everyone has it. You focus on your technology, not on compliance or business. Incomplete documentation, neither in the quality management system or technical documentation for approvals. And clinical part is always, I think, very critical, and you should really pay attention to do it well and not to steer away from clinical investigations, but they will be part of your marketing materials, part of your sales brochures and sales claims and your value proposition. So that's where I wouldn't plan in leaving out clinical investigations, but plan to have them made and then have a budget, make sure that you have the funds to collect that data to support your business. Incomplete filings to the notified body, US FDA or other parties. These take a lot of time, and all the non-conformities take a lot of time to re-answer also. So it's a communication that you would want to flow very fluently from the beginning to the end. This is where experience comes to a lot of play. But on the positive side, these were the blunders, but I really want to highlight how a company, this would be Nuna Healthcare now from years back already, they were acquired by Varian, who nowadays actually belong to Siemens Healthineers. But Nuna, in their early stages, they had identified lots of business risks, naturally, but they had decided also that risk in compliance was not something they could not afford. They had this intrinsic idea in their minds. So they went on to learn and went to trainings, so forth, and they recognized that everything they actually do for the sake of compliance translates into smart and efficient business and highly valuable marketing material. They want to make safe products by definition. They want to have all that data, the clinical data, to support their marketing and sales. So it makes a lot of sense if you just take it and own it. And this is an example of a business model canvas where we suggest that everything in green, and this is just a mock canvas, but your compliance should show. And I'm sorry to say that it's mostly showing here in this diagram in the cost structure, causing you costs. But in the end, when you do it right, and when you do it with the idea of complementing your business, then you will also see that in the end in your revenue streams. But it is a fact that the health tech innovation takes more funds to develop them, potentially something very different. So those would be my learnings that I want to share with you. And the three tools, the AI Act tool, the Data Act tool, and the EHDS regulation tool, they are free to utilize by all SMEs and public sector organizations in EU, in Europe, free of charge. And if it comes down to those MDR tools, IVDR tools, then we would need to make an arrangement, an exchange of funds with your home organization or you as a startup. But we'd rather have you experience these tools free of charge. Thank you very much for my part. And
Thank you.
Carolina, if there are any questions.
Thank you very much, Heikki. It's been really clarifying, at least as we were saying, to see the a path to follow. That's I think it's a great beginning to face all this legal stuff. I have a question, if you don't mind.
Very good.
Because we
Will
were
I stop sharing? Will it be nicer if?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Everyone got this link or the QR code? Let me stop.
We have been talking a lot about like taking the first steps from the beginning, and I hope that's what everybody is doing in the room. But if we have moved on with our project without taking into account compliance soon enough, what do we do? Or how do we reverse the situation or make it right when we are already, I don't know, in an advanced stage of development, or what kind
It happens. Yeah, it happens a lot, and it's always difficult. It really depends on the type of a product and how much you can do afterwards. You naturally need somebody who understands the regulatory. You will need to do some sort of gap analysis on what you have done so far and what the requirements say, and then it's line by line going through of your gap analysis to see how to fill in in this part and that part and so forward. And yes, we've done that quite a lot. It is always a little bit painful. It really depends on the project, how much can be done afterwards.
Okay.
It needs to look good for the reviewer, for the notified body or the FDA, and naturally, looking good is just one thing. The real deal is to be able to say that this is safe. And in the end, if you cannot make that claim for yourself, then you will need to go back and redesign.
Oh, that's hard. Okay, so we had a question before, Lila Martinez. Yeah, we are going to share the presentation afterwards. I invite you all to subscribe to our newsletter. You can find the link in Tick Biomed website. It's really easy to find, so we will be sharing the materials afterwards. I don't know if there is any other questions you would like to ask to Heikki.
Joni has made some comments. Thank you, Joni. And we worked before, so it's
okay. So
it's nice to.
Sorry, I hadn't seen this.
Actually,
So,
there's one question from Joni that does entries provide support for FDA regulatory requirements? Unfortunately, today, no. We have plans to create more e-tools. They would focus maybe on the GDPR and other EU regulations to start with or to continue with. But we do have an idea that FDA regulations could be crafted in a similar format. There is, however, an association that is called the Digital Medicine Society, and they, on their website, I might have it here, I can provide you a link, and everyone else, and you are, since we are on the digital medicine topic, this will surely help you out. The challenge is that this organization, we've been in dialogue, where do I type it? Sorry, I didn't mean to press that button. I need to go back. I typed to another place. Here you have it. I hope everyone sees it. Does everyone see a link somewhere?
yes, thank you.
So they are struggling to maintain it, even though they have very impressive looking sponsors there, like Google Health and others. But it is not in their focus to continue with those regulatory tools. So it would be great if we could collaborate with the Digital Medicine Society and bring that tool content into ours in one way or the other.
Great. So, well, Joni was also commenting that it's important to answer precisely the questions, otherwise the results may be distorted, I guess. That's why you have so many complementary information in the tool. Just as you said, with a little bit of patience and time, I guess you can find the right questions for all the find the right answers for all the questions.
Innovators, they really go back and forth, so they test their options, taking different answers and see how it affects their compliance.
Okay, so I don't know if someone else would like to ask any questions. Okay, I'm seeing that we have answered all of them. So if there is nothing else, I would just like to thank you all again for your time. I hope it's been interesting and clarifying for you. And I hope to see you all in our next webinar. We will be announcing it soon through our channels. So thank you very much, Heikki, for your time and your knowledge. And see you soon, hopefully.
Muchas gracias, and I hope the recording will find its way also to those who didn't make it today.
Yeah, sure. We will share the link soon. Okay.
Exactly.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.